Right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio, and we are reporting from Tucson, Arizona. We are here at Derechos Humanos Human Rights Center, working in Tucson, dealing with the many issues that have to do with worker rights, immigrants' rights, racist laws, guns, and many other problems, and problems particularly faced by brown people in this state. That's probably just about half. Latino, Mexican American, Chicano. I haven't seen the statistics lately, but I think it's close. And we're joined by Isabella Garcia. She is co-chair of Derechos Humanos. She also directs the Pima County Legal Defenders Office. She is a practicing attorney and a civil rights activist. And also we have a teacher, Maria Federico Bremer, who is in the Tucson Unified School District. She teaches Mexican American Studies. You've heard on this broadcast the struggle going on here against the ban. And this brave teacher has taken it to the streets, is testing it in the courts now. And I guess, Maria, you're facing sentencing at this point. Yes? Oh, there's an appeal in process, yes?
We are currently filing the lawsuit. We amended it recently to include our district governing board as one of the defendants.
Okay, we're going to talk more about that later, but welcome to the broadcast. Welcome to both of you. It seems to me, Isabella Garcia, this work, this human rights work that happens here in this office is becoming more crucial and needing more support. You want to talk a little bit about life in this office and give us a sense of what you're trying to do here?
Okay, thank you very much. And it's Isabel Garcia. I don't have the A, but same thing. We've been here, for a really long time in this community, working on the issue of immigrant rights. So we have a long, experience since the mid 70s. That has led to, the continuation of this work under the name of Derechos Humanos at this point. In 93, regrouping as Derechos Humanos, deciding that the fight for migrant rights was not covered sufficiently by a civil rights framework. And so we adopted a human rights framework. That's the name, Derechos Humanos. So that's how I feel, that we're talking about human rights, and you talked about some of them in your introductory message. But I think foremost is that, our work here is to work for rights of migrants and all these communities. But in the end, we are really a part of a broad struggle for all of it. So we've worked migrant rights or labor rights, migrant rights or environmental rights, indigenous rights, all of it, So we don't work in really this silo. We work with partners and always have since the mid-70s, knowing that these are our allies and that we have each other's agenda. And so, and that's sort of what we've been doing long term. But right at this moment, we are facing the real direct results of policies that were begun in 1994. Of course, even more earlier than that in certain years, during the Reagan years, already talking about having military control and all of this. But in the mid-90s, we saw prevention through deterrence policies, the strategy for the southern border, resulting in Gatekeeper, Operation Hold the Line, Operation Rio Grande, and here in Arizona, Operation Safeguard, creating a funnel for migrants to have to cross through Arizona, denying passages through the traditional crossing areas for people from Mexico and Central America for the past 100 years, for the past 100 years that we have invited them, coaxed them to come over here, and have had economic policies that have another impetus to make them come here. So anyway, we sealed those traditional crossing areas, creating a funnel through Arizona, I believe, to create a laboratory for everything that was anti-immigrant, anti-human. And dicho y hecho, that's what's happened. We have seen now the results of these policies that have worked up through the border, up through the state of Arizona in particular, to create a state of intolerance and of hatred and dehumanization. At the same time, elevating rights to guns for everybody and any kind of gun, while at the same time trashing public education, slashing it to the bottom, and slashing all mental health and behavioral health services money. So it was a disaster waiting to happen, and we knew it would, and it has exploded here in Tucson.
Just over my shoulder here, there are boxes full of crosses. They have names on them, ages on them, and there's a lot of crosses over my shoulder. This is a story, this is a picture that people in the rest of this country do not hear about. There's a spotlight on the state because of a certain violent act, and 6 people died in a terrible incident, but I'm thinking about these crosses.
Yes. It's really tough here in this room. We take all the crosses out every year on Dia de los Muertos, and we honor them at San Javier, at the Tahona Autumn, beautiful San Javier. But imagine when you see them all spread and you see how many people have died since 1994. Specifically, since 1994. Thousands. And many more we don't even know of. A third of them fully desconocidos, not known. Imagine dying because you want to survive. You love your family. You love life. And you die, and your family doesn't even know what's happened to you. So we have a vigil that we started also, that we celebrated 10 years in June, that we have every Thursday at El Tiradito, a little shrine here that has become the shrine of the immigrant, and say, we're witness, we're witness to our policies and what we're allowing, and the dehumanization, the normalization of hate and intolerance and turning on one another. In this country, what we have is a real lack of knowledge of history, of immigration history, our history with Mexico, any of those, why people are here. I mean, people don't analyze it. They don't want to know, or they don't know, one or the other. So there's ignorance. And then secondly, they get manipulated by fear. The fear is unbelievable. Unbelievable, unprecedented. The terrorist attacks took us to another level of fear. And then on top of it, the economic tsunami where, Americans all used to a standard of living, and all of a sudden you're losing your job, you're losing your cars, you're losing everything that you knew, and you need somebody to blame. And so there's this fear of real and unreal. And then, I hate to say the third one, but there's like an arrogance that we have as Americans that really lead us to this disaster right here. This human rights crisis that's right behind you is a result of that. Ignorance, fear, and arrogance, sense of superiority. And so we can do better. We're human beings, and we better start acting like human beings and caring for each other. That should be our number one rule as human beings. That's what we're supposed to do. And instead, it's turned into, hatred. violence and threats, and the state built, remember, since 94, funneling over 50% of all migrants, creating images for the media to broadcast every single night of dozens of men crossing, and the gates that were torn, or water lines that were torn for migrants, all the damage that was done, of course blaming migrants, not blaming the policies that pushed them in there. So you create all of this, and no compensation for people who had any losses, by the way, right? They didn't do that. But fomenting all this fear, then allowed the vigilantes to come in. In 1996, we sent Janet Reno a letter saying, look at what these ranchers just signed. They have a letter to you here saying that they're announcing, if you don't do something about controlling the border, we're going to take the law into our own hands and blood will be shed. That was in their letter. We sent to Janet Reno and said, oh my God, this is like a conspiracy to violate civil rights. And since then, ignored, and of course going further with these policies, creating a toxic atmosphere for the state of Arizona, always conservative, and in those days, for many years, fastest growing state in the nation. And who was moving in here?
Don't know.
Retirees, not migrants, retirees. Retirees, as a general rule, coming from other areas of the country that don't even know this part of the country, or Mexicanos or anything. Retirees, general rule, conservative, and they've come into Arizona, and the real proof is that they're slashing public education. Really slashing, with an attitude, we've educated our children, that's enough, we're not going to educate anymore. And so with that kind of growing, a more conservative nature of the state, being able to funnel in people through Arizona, because Arizona border is owned by the federal government, state government, the Tohono O'odham Nation, and a few private property owners. Unlike all of the other borders, people used to say, well, if your theory's correct, why wouldn't they funnel them through Texas? It's quite conservative. You saw the fight back that community did when Chertoff was trying to build a wall. We're talking brown, black, indigenous nations, universities, sheriffs, everybody doing a fight back. Here we had no fight back because it's our environment that they invaded, that they created funnels for people to have to go through and die. Many, yes, make it through unbelievably. Can you imagine?
How would you describe how Tucson has changed? Is the situation profoundly worse in the last 5-10 years?
Yes, I think
Worse under Obama?
Worse than what?
Worse under Obama?
Well, only worse because in regards to immigration, you have to look at the fact that, though I side with the Democrats, more, that in terms of immigration, it's Democrats and Republicans that continue to resource and allowed to grow in unprecedented fashion this entire apparatus of enforcement, of detentions, deportations, and now that's not enough. Now we're going to criminalize them first before we deport them. So we flood the Tucson court. I don't know if you got to see Operation Streamline, but we criminalize 70 people every single day en masse in a 1 to 2 hour session, from beginning of criminal case to end where you get sentenced to a private prison, all within 1 hour. Again, normalizing massive violations of constitutional rights here because you're using immigrants and people don't care. Anyway, we finance that, Democrat or Republican. And so the bottom line, it's not that Obama's more anti-immigrant because he's deported more people than Bush did. It's because this, of course, it's going to operate better. We have continued to resource it and allow it to grow. Of course, it's going to be better.
Talk about the role that the private prison system and the private prison is playing in this context now here in this state.
It's been going on for a long time. I've, read articles here and there from different journalists throughout the years that have, focused in on these prison systems. And look at CCA, Corrections Corporation of America, a Tennessee corporation that prior to 9/11 was not doing well, had some history of lawsuits for abuse and corruption, all sort of things. And then 9/11 occurs, and the entire, that area of work just exploded. I mean, just exploded. And it's not just the incarceration, all kinds, these conferences that they've had for all kinds of gimmicks and apparatuses and machinery and technology and everything to guard the border. They've had these conferences where they draw, executives and stuff. And in fact, there was an exodus of over 100 people in the Bush administration that left office to go to one of these contractors.
And to join the fight to secure the border with
Absolutely.
the latest technology.
Absolutely. And it has been a fast ticket for them. While we don't have resources for our teachers, for schools, we don't have health services, our roads are dilapidated, our highways are dangerous. There's all these needs that would provide real security, and instead we have whipped up this fear so that these military prison building industry contractors, private, are becoming billionaires at our expense and creating no security at all. Not security. Look at the security we've created. Before 94, we didn't have these crosses behind you.
You're listening to Flashpoints on Pacifica Radio, and we're here in Tucson, Arizona. That was Isabel Garcia. She is the co-chair of Derechos Humanos. This is a human rights center doing life and death work and getting support from some areas, but under attack by the state legislature and by a whole bunch of people who are really using this sort of tough time in the economy to turn the screws on brown people in this state. Joining us in that context is Maria Federico Brummer.
Brummer.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to do all these introductions over. Believe me, this is just for now. We're gonna edit this and all that kind of stuff. But it's Brummer, right? Brummer. Okay. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You teach in the Tucson Unified School District. You teach Mexican American Studies. You're also involved in legal action. First of all, let's talk about the work that you do teaching Mexican American studies. How long have you done that?
I started with the program in 2005 and started teaching because I was a project specialist / teacher in 2006-2007 school year. So it's relatively a small period of time. Prior to that, I taught for 7 years at a middle school, and I taught Chicano studies and Yaqui studies there too.
And did you take, were you studying ethnic studies when you were in school? Did you have a chance to take this course?
Not in high school, no.
No. Did you miss it? Do you think you would have gained from it?
Yeah, absolutely. My first exposure to Chicano studies and that kind of curriculum was at the U of A in college. And I had mentors like Salomon Valenegro, one of our veteranos here in Tucson. And we learned about people like Isabel and the struggles that they started and have continued, and that diligent work that they're doing. And I'm just embraced Chicano studies in college, and I knew that I wanted to be a teacher, and I was going to somehow implement Chicano studies in my curriculum in any way that I could. And 1998, our department was created, and that's the year that I started teaching. And I, of course, wanted to become a part of this department. So as soon as the position opened, I was able to come in and teach.
What was your first response when you found out that you had a superintendent that wanted to ban the work that you devoted your life to?
2006, that's when the attacks began. It's devastating to hear lies about how we teach and what we teach, and statements were made about our students as being disrespectful and that we as teachers were teaching them that because their parents would they would send them to school and expect a quality education, and here we were as teachers teaching them to be disrespectful to people in authority who didn't want to engage with the youth, who didn't speak to our youth at all when requested. They did want to have a talk with Tom Horn, and at that time he had brought in his deputy superintendent, and he refused. He straight out refused to speak to them and to engage with them.
And tell us what the struggle is like now. You're part of a lawsuit. Give us just the basic thumbnail sketch of what the suit is about.
It is an attempt to find that House Bill HB 2281 is unconstitutional on the grounds of both the First Amendment and 14th Amendment rights of us as teachers, and we are also using a sort of our best friend clause for our students. For us, we're 11 teachers total. We see it as our responsibility to the generations before us and to the generations coming up to ensure that ethnic studies is alive and well and continues in our community, because this is a grassroots struggle that began in, just like across the nation, in the late 60s in order for Chicanos to empower themselves and see themselves in their education and to not be really basic, have their rights to their language and to their cultures in their classroom, and to have representation on their campuses. And that's what we've come to. And now we're under attack, where the population, especially in this district, we're now over 60%. The demographics have changed quite a bit. And we're a program that overwhelmingly has been able to be successful for our students. And not all of our students are Chicano or Mexican American descent. We have diversity in the classroom, but across the board, our students succeed, no matter what backgrounds they come from.
Do you believe this study, ethnic studies, saves lives? I've heard it put in the context of public health, that the health of a child and the health of a student has a lot to do with the quality and how they feel about themselves and about the cultures they come through and the music that they sing. Talk about that.
There's a quote that our ex-superintendent of public instruction used in his evidence against our program, and it had to do with oppression. And that young woman who did say that in front of she went to the state in front of a judiciary committee, which most 17-year-olds don't do or take the time to have that initiative and have that strength to do that. And she addressed them. She's a young woman, Mariah Harvey. She's African American and white, and she took our classes. She embraces our values in the classes, the value of rehumanization, of seeing each other as one another, as true human beings. And she said that she didn't know that she was oppressed until she had taken these classes. Now, the idea of oppression it's now normalized. We don't see it. And so for her, being a woman, being African American and white, having to deal with being multiracial in this society, she was able to see that in these spaces, and it changed her life. Her mother I'm still in contact with her just a couple weeks ago. She reiterated that just once again, that the work that we're doing as teachers changes lives. It changed her daughter's life. She saw her going down a path, and 16, 17 years old, it's a pivotal time in a young person's life. And she saw her going in a certain direction. And after taking our classes and coming home excited about her education, about her learning, and being a part of this community here in Tucson and wanting to work towards its best, she made a difference. We made a difference in her life. And she's very proud of her education. Her mother's proud of her education, and she continues to be a part of the struggle as an ex-parent as well.
What do you think drives Mr. Horn? I mean, I've heard it described as a vendetta, a response to a response to a single appearance by Dolores Huerta in Tucson schools, talking about, I guess, recognizing the truth that white people have always been afraid of and oftentimes hate brown people and particularly Mexican people in this part of the country. What do you think drives it?
2006 was an election year. I'll say that pretty plain and clear. I believe that he used our children, our students, for his own political personal gain, and that's my opinion. I believe he targeted a program that was effective, and he created legislation towards their education to continue to dehumanize them. And it's very, for me, it's very emotional, because I've seen years of students coming through, and every year it's overwhelming how students come out saying, this is a family. It's not just a classroom. This is a family for me. And this is the reason I come to school. This is the reason that I'm doing well in math. And we don't teach math at all. This is the reason that I go home and I share this with my family, my younger brothers and sisters, and we have these discussions and we engage in this way, and we're a part of this community, and we're going to change it for the better.
I want to ask you finally, how has the response been from your students and then your colleagues?
Yeah. For my students, the day that our governor signed this HB 2281 into law, we couldn't continue with our regular curriculum. They came in devastated. And so
it was just banned. You could not, it would be illegal to teach what you teach every day.
Absolutely. We had to just stop and get a sense for what everyone was feeling. And we cried. We had to mourn. We had to mourn in the classroom space because of this individual and this law and this agenda. And over and over again, it was that we're going to continue to fight for these spaces. And it's not just for them, because these are juniors and seniors. Most juniors and seniors, they've got very different ideas of what they should be using their time for. And these ones are organizing 13-mile marches. These ones are going to board meetings. These ones are going in front of state legislatures and judiciary committees. Very different human beings. And they see the importance not for themselves, but for the generations coming up. And it's a huge responsibility. Huge responsibility. As for myself and my colleagues, it's much of the same. That loss, we had two previous pieces of legislation were attempted, and this was a fight. And at some point, we felt that we lost. But we knew that we were gonna regroup, and we were gonna fight this. And as 11 plaintiffs, we're now doing that. And so when my students ask me in the classroom, what's going to happen to the class, like, we're going to fight every way that we can. You're going to continue to have your cousins, your brothers and sisters enroll in these spaces, because it's going to be here as long as I'm going to be here. And we've got a whole community backing. Isabel's here, and it's an honor for her to be in this space. Mm. She's a part of our Mexican American Studies Advisory Board, and it's people like Isabel that continue to struggle as community members on our behalf, on our students' behalf, and all for our community, selflessly.
Isabel Garcia, I want you to talk to this in the context of there are many kinds of violence. And this is systematic. Wouldn't you say, would you call it systematic oppression?
Absolutely, to target you, and that's how the imagine being the youth, being taking these classes, and all of a sudden they're telling you you're not going to have them. It's an attempt. Well, it's an attempt to almost. They're in an attempt to like have ethnic genocide of some kind. Cultural. They want to deny our history. They do not want us to know the truth. I grew up luckily enough. Oh my God, that I'm first generation through my father's side. I'm so happy because he gave me my version of ethnic studies. I just knew that there was such a history that we had because of my father. And, when I went to the University of Arizona, the first things I took were the history of Mexico, of Latin America, and all of it. And so when this program was finally here in Tucson, I mean, it's unbelievable. And to have the success that it has, and that they know they've told these policymakers and that they attack them anyway, what does that tell you there, right? When the rules of the game are what? That you get good AIM scores, that you go on to college, that you get good grades.
Stay in
So they
school,
meet
yeah.
that, and now you're changing these rules, right? And it always happens. You change the rules. But they're not going to they don't want to let they've targeted our children in a terrible, terrible way. Our immigrant youth, our Latino youth with lack of resources for services, and then the attack on ethnic studies is an attempt.
I mean, it's like you can't learn.
Yeah,
Sorry.
imagine that.
It is hard to fathom. I have to admit, I hear a lot of garbage going on in this country and a lot of politics. But this one is hard to grasp. And as a, go on.
And they're full of hate, right? They're hating on the Mexicanos, on the migrants, on everything. Just hate, hate, hate. And then they accuse us of hate. That this ethnic studies, teaches resentment. Oh my God, they're the ones teaching hatred and resentment toward. The way they've been able to twist it is unbelievable.
Any kid that stays in school because of what they're studying in school is on the right path, right? Isn't that what we learned?
Beautiful.
I mean, this teaches actually love. I mean,
does.
I'm not a touchy-feely sort of guy here, but it really is teaching self-love and thus the ability to reach out and not to have that sort of hunted warrior mentality, right? Because you do have this self-worth. You talk about the statistics. I think that's what blows my mind, that they're so strongly positive about staying in school, about going to college. Do we want to have a say in the future of the world? Do we want smart kids? As a teacher, I just can't. I did spend 15 years teaching. I was what you might call an emotionally disturbed teacher. But I know the difference, and I know when you offer an opportunity to a young person to really grow and learn, and it means something to them, everything can change. Sometimes they don't tell you for 15 years, but then they come back and tell you. So you really enjoy this teaching, don't you? This is... that's the tragedy, that everybody grows and it is oppression because it's being made illegal. It's being what you love, your culture, your music, your history is being banned.
Yeah. And for our students, and the biggest thing is looking at community. They come, they find themselves, they find their culture, and then they go out and they find their community. And they see it through a completely different lens. And
how does
progress.
one find their community?
They start noticing how they can improve their communities. They start not saying that, well, that's just the way it is. They start challenging that hegemony. They start to question every part of their lives, but in order to make it progressive, in order to make a stronger impact. And they get an understanding that we're only here in this world for a short period of time. And as young people, getting that, it's amazing. And they know that they're empowered to make this place a better place while they're here, and to make their family safe, and to nurture humanity once again, especially in this state. They can see it. It's all over in the media, wherever they turn. It's in their face. That resentment is there. That hatred is there. And we, as teachers, it's our responsibility to give them the tools in order to, rather just internalize it or react only to it, to channel it and to change it. And that's what we do in the classrooms. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of lies and a lot of material that's out of context being used as evidence. And I've had my classroom burglarized, basically.
Retaliation.
Well, teachers have come in and have taken materials. They've taken it upon themselves to smuggle out materials. And that's a quote from one of our Arizona Republic journalists, that he's come upon materials that were smuggled out of the classrooms.
In other words, teachers sort of vigilante style enforcing the new ban on teaching Mexican American studies, ethnic studies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you think? So, because it's illegal in the classroom now.
Well, now, yeah. This is even previously. I mean, it wasn't law yet, and teachers the teachers have taken it upon. Now they're, you could call them disgruntled employees, etc. They took it upon themselves to go through our classroom, our space, and again, our space, our students' space, where they feel this is a home, this is a family place for them, and just take whatever they feel that they need, copy it, send it off to whomever they feel they need to take it to.
What did they take?
They've taken worksheets.
To prove that you're teaching?
Yeah.
You're breaking the law?
Right. And if you look at Tom Horn's 10-page document as evidence against us, I think the 9th page is entirely a textbook, or not a textbook, it's out of text that we use for professional development for administrators. It was never even used in the classroom. So these are people that just went, through bookcases or off of desks and grabbed whatever looked interesting and made copies and sent it off.
See, my next question is going to be, what kind of divisive impact is this having on the teaching profession, on all the teachers as a whole? Is it sort of like separating white and brown and black? Well, it must have that kind of impact.
Well, we are fearful because of the money talks issue. So the 10% reduction, the sanction.
Right. If you break the law and break the ban, you lose state aid.
Right. So after 60 days, if we're seen as out of compliance as a district, then that sanction will be invoked. There are faculty members that can't see that. They can't see that your academic freedom is now being challenged across the board. They're just focusing right now on one group, but they'll be here for you soon. Our freedom of speech as teachers, we value that, and we do influence students, but it's always with a sense of responsibility that we take that, and it's an ethical question as a teacher, and it's not just about money. And it's not just about one Mexican American Studies class that's on campus. It's about all of us as teachers. It's our academic freedom. It's our voice. And it's how we teach and how we are professionals that's being jeopardized. For us in our classrooms, that censorship is already there. the materials that we use, we continue to use them, but it's always, we know that we're being scrutinized under in a magnifying glass, basically, in comparison to our colleagues. And our district has sent out, communications letting us know, as teachers, that there might be some materials that you use, and you need to be ensuring that you have a balance in everything that you use. But I mean, how can you have a balance when there's so much dehumanization going on? It's really difficult to give the other side when you know that in your classroom that you have children of families who have been deported. It's a completely different conversation, and we can't do that. We can't not look at our students and not look at their individual situations and just teach. It's you have to go beyond that. You have to have an understanding of who these young people are, where they come from, their families, and nurture them. That's our responsibility.
So somebody comes in and says, yeah, they took my mother, they took my father, they took my brother. I don't even know where they took them. You can't ignore that. That's the responsibility in this community at this time in the face of these policies.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, I really do appreciate both of you giving us the time to talk about these issues that are not understood in other parts of the country, in the liberal community that I come from in the Bay Area. People don't have the slightest idea, except for a certain community who understands very well what's going on. But the larger community and around the country, this is not understood. So again, it's a privilege. We thank you for letting us be here and be your guests, and we'll be back. Thank you.
Al contrario, thank you for coming down here. Really, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Our privilege. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I really